Okay. Can everybody hear me? Good morning. How is everybody doing today? Well, good morning. Welcome to reInvent. Thank you for having us here. I'm very excited to talk to you all today about what we've done in AWS in terms of building expert communities, both in terms of online community and managed community. We'll be talking about both of those things today. So my name's John Bell. I lead a program at AWS called Technical Field Communities, which I'll be talking about shortly. And I'm joined here by Ceci, who is the AWS Knowledge Management Senior Manager. So for today, there'll be 5 things, really, 6 things that we'll talk about. First, just a little bit of background and history of AWS, the scaling challenges we had over time as we've grown as a company and how we've built communities to help support the scale. And then I'll talk a little about Technical Field Communities, or TFCs, which is our AWS community strategy. And Ceci will then talk about the different things that we're doing in order to create online communities with all of you, which is really an overview of the Repost product, how to use it. And I'll share some best practices on things we've learned, some experiences we have, and some best practices you can use when you're building your own communities as well. And Ceci will end with call to action. And so with that, thank you, and Ceci, over to you.
Thanks, John, for the warm introduction. So, hello, everyone. I'm honored to be here to talk about AWS Knowledge Management. So, as you know, AWS has been continuously expanding its portfolio of services over the past several years. And as we continue to expand on these services, we offer the breadth of services for you to run virtually any workload in the cloud. And at the same time, AWS offers the deepest functionality. So as we continue to scale and as we continue to innovate at fast pace, so we found it challenging at AWS in terms of solution architects and technical account managers. Found it challenging to learn the depth and breadth of services across AWS. So, and at the same time, we were growing at a fast pace. AWS was scaling in terms of customers, partners, and employees. And we were looking to find ways on how to scale across the organization. So, and to onboard the technical account managers and solution architects, we found it even more challenging with the scale. So then we saw a huge opportunity with knowledge management and to provide the right guidance to all of our customers and partners. So what we worked backwards from our customers to put the right expert in front of you for the right guidance. What do we mean is, how do we know who are the right experts, and how do we identify these experts, and what subject matter expertise they have, and then how can we efficiently utilize their skills to help our customers and partners, and at the same time, with the scaling challenge, so how do we support employee learning and growth, and how do we harvest collaboration across these experts? Most challenging was, how do we scale with the rapid growth? Like I mentioned, with this, with the growth of customers, our services, and partners, and employees. To address these, we developed Grassroots knowledge management mechanisms. First, we launched an AWS internal Q&A site a few years ago to really drive collaboration across our internal experts and harvest innovation and collaboration and best practice sharing. In parallel, we launched and created technical field communities to provide employees with the learning opportunities and career growth plan, and at the same time, facilitate scaling of AWS. Let's hear from John about technical field communities.
Great. Thank you, Ceci. So taking into account all these observations of what Ceci said, kind of the scale challenges, how do we kind of enable people to become their best selves, really, and learn these different skill sets and dive deep. All of those things led to the need at AWS to build out technical communities to streamline all the different efforts of knowing who those experts are, how do we enable them, and then what do they go do. So this mechanism is what we call technical field communities, and I'm going to share with you a little about what do we do with them. So first of all, what are these things? What are TFCs is the acronym that we use for this. Really, they're 4 things. One is they are communities of experts. So it's a common framework across AWS, across different organizations, geographies, for people to be able to collaborate globally on different aspects of technology. So this is an enablement mechanism, right? So we train people, they go through learning paths, they have mentors. There's a whole process around becoming an expert, and then how these folks stay as experts through events and these type of things. Beyond that, it's a collaboration mechanism. So one way, this is kind of one way that we can work together on content, solution guidance, all the different assets that you would see. The TFCs are integral in creating these, identifying what we want to create, as well as keeping them fresh with the right information. And then finally, it's a scaling mechanism for one-to-many engagements, things like events such as reInvent and participation in that, as well as direct customer interactions and a way for our experts to connect with customers. So I want to take you a little bit into the experience of members, right? So when people join these communities, how do they do that? How do they identify their expertise? And then how do they become an expert? So first of all, at AWS, with solution architect role, technical account managers, CSMs, all the different tech roles we have, they need to understand the breadth of technology first. And so we have a number of mechanisms where they do that. They do projects. We call that Awesome Builder, where they will go and share information. And then once they've done that, we encourage them all to join a TFC. And the way they decide that is A, what customer demand do we have out there? If all my customers are in like the retail industry, maybe I should learn about retail, for example. Or I'm hearing a lot about machine learning workloads, so therefore I should go dive deeper in machine learning, as well as career interests and things that they want to do with their career. So we give the choice to them, where they then come in, take a learning path, the TFCs curate all the information, they get a mentor, somebody who's already an expert, where they grow their experiences and then give back their experience to customers, as well as then mentoring the next generation of experts. So this is an important aspect because this is how you grow your community, how you keep it sharp, and even that mentoring piece is a part of how those experts keep their skills sharp as they're going and training new people, along with other learning type of mechanisms we have. So next is like, how are these things structured? Right, so first of all, scope management is critical because you can build communities around any number of use cases. And if you want to make them meaningful, it's best to focus. So what we've done is we have two primary use cases that we have identified of ways that we can best support our customers at AWS. One is around expertise around service or technology knowledge. Things like analytics, machine learning, compute, storage. How we kind of break up our AWS service portfolio, where we enable people as experts via the TFCs to therefore help with those areas. The second is really segment aligned. So these are industry segments, so knowledge around retail, media and entertainment, healthcare, et cetera. And as we look at customer trends, we also focus on a couple cross-industry, more solution-oriented use cases, things like sustainability. So we're very careful in how we select these communities. They incorporate a number of use cases. They do have sub-specializations within them. But how you determine that and how you architect that is important because it will then focus the people in your company on what do they want to learn and what is going to give the highest business impact. So some considerations we had in AWS as well is all of these communities are inclusive of all field roles. Anybody in AWS can join one of these TFCs. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure to have like a diverse perspective. We want to encourage people to learn, collaborate, and grow their careers. And every one of these is worldwide in scope. We don't do any that are regionally specific, organizationally specific, anything like that. These by design are meant to cross organizations. So the last thing I'll share in this slide is just how do we resource these, right? Who are the members in them? So first we have dedicated ownership. We have a role called tech leaders that I think are important because they provide the thought leadership, direction, and inspiration for the community, as well as community program management who drive the operations, the tooling strategy, reporting, what content do we want to build, what do we want people to learn, and they'll go and drive the execution of that. And then within that, there's two primary roles in AWS that are members of these communities. One is specialist. So we have a specialist organization, and all of them are asked to join these TFCs because these TFCs are aligned to what they're hired to do anyways, right? So for example, if a machine learning specialist, SA, joins AWS, they would then join the AI/ML TFC. And then the area of depth is really what I referred to as earlier, and these are generalists who we actually give time to go join these communities as experts in a portion of their role, where they can go help their peers as local experts, called area of depth, SAs, TAMs, CSMs, et cetera. Okay, so what do these members do, right? And I think this could be different for different companies in some ways, but there's a lot of common things that you can gain value from. And I think the important thing to think about with these communities, how can you use them to be more efficient in the work that people are doing and harvesting assets in an efficient manner? So I think there's two primary things they do. One is collaboration within the community. That's working on content, what do we want to build, identifying that, keeping it fresh. What do we want people to learn, both from a mentoring perspective as well as an ongoing kind of learning events and continuous training, not just for the community, but for everybody else as well. So a lot of these, the assets that come out of this are training materials that we would kind of help, not just for AWS, but also for our customers and partners. And the second piece is really how do we utilize these to best support our customers. Things like efficient routing of specialist requests. How could we help when you need an expert in your account SA, for example, or account manager needs to pull in a specialist? We can do that more efficiently through the use of a single community system, as well as things like external summits, workshops and immersion days. And this is a great way to curate feedback for our service teams to improve our products. Because these folks are, talking with you all on a regular basis, learning, and we can share those learnings back to the service teams to make sure that we're building in a customer-obsessed manner. So I think of this in kind of the classic Amazonian flywheel. I'm sure you've all seen this in multiple Amazon presentations, but in the way that I think about this in the world of technical field communities is first of all by training people, empowering them, giving them a space to learn, innovate in a way that can be impactful, provides recognition, and therefore they would then mentor other people, like I showed earlier. And by doing this, they grow the community, they grow the collective knowledge of AWS, which then helps for us to support customers better, scale best practices, scale our knowledge, like I talked about earlier, capturing signal, and then accelerating adoption, which grows demand and then has a need for us to grow our communities even larger in certain areas, right? So this is a self-fulfilling prophecy that, if we train people in the right areas, then we can then utilize that knowledge to help everybody, across the world in a more efficient way. So for individual, I think of this in terms of two primary types of benefits. One is, what are the benefits for the individuals? And the second is, what are they for the leaders? So starting with individuals, why do people join these communities? Beyond their provided time and their, in a lot of roles, asked to, right? So, but regardless of that, they do get recognition as a technical expert. This is how AWS certifies that people are experts in given subject areas. So if that is part of their career plans, which it is for most technical folks, then this is a great way to do it because it's kind of the standard way that we have an actual trusted process that we know people are experts. They can do that through skill building, learning. They get invitation to a lot of special events and things that might be difficult for people to attain on their own. And then they're given the ability to collaborate with each other and support customers in an effective way. So just to illustrate this, I wanted to share a couple anecdotes that I grabbed from some of our members. Here's two here, one from the aerospace TFC and another from the media TFC. I'll just give you a chance to read what we're talking, but it's, if you see this, it's powerful because they were able to kind of learn in a structured manner, provide support for their customers in an effective way, and scale their information out. And without the use of a TFC, this would have been kind of in siloed different multiple approaches. So the second is kind of benefit for leaders, like I said earlier, right? And so why has the company continued to invest in this? One is really the way that we're able to help our employees, right? To build their technical depth, support their career growth in certain areas. Leaders are given standardized reporting that show demand signals coming from our customers, as well as how many experts do we have to meet that demand, right? Which flows into how do we train people? What should we build content for? Where should we empower more people to learn in given subject areas? Where should we even create a new TFC? So that's kind of the scale aspect. And then really it's the ability to efficiently gain access to experts locally and globally to support customer use cases. So again, I have a couple anecdotes here. So this is some of the use cases that we saw about the account teams when they needed help to help you all, to help customers. So please take a second to read this. And I think it also shows kind of the power of how people can innovate together in order to achieve kind of best practices and knowledge sharing. All right, so finally, I wanted to say, how do you connect with these? So this is all cool. Like, I definitely want to know, how would I actually engage with a TFC? There are a couple ways. So first of all, you're already connected with these communities, and you probably don't. You may not know it. You may know it, but the way that it's kind of structured is that every time that you've had kind of a deep dive engagement, immersion day, something like that, and an expert has been pulled in, the mechanism they use to do that is through this program. The second is you've probably already been meeting them here at reInvent. If you haven't, still one day left, so I think you still have a chance to do so at the booths and all that. And then finally, you can connect directly with our experts in our online community product, Repost, which was launched last year. We just had the 1-year anniversary today. So, but that's a great way to connect in the online community, gain knowledge from AWS employees, as well as all the customers and experts and partners out there in the world who are utilizing this technology as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ceci, who's going to talk more about Repost, talk about how you can learn about our online community product and how you can use it to create communities of your own.
Thanks again, John. So before I talk about Repost, earlier I mentioned about a Q&A site that we have been using internally at AWS. So we thought, and we built the technical field communities that John spoke about. So what we thought was, how do we take these two and then externalize these capabilities for our customers? Not only help them solve the problems in a self-service manner, but also how do the customers scale their knowledge across their workloads. So I will talk a bit about why we launched Repost and what are the benefits and how you can use it to help you in your day-to-day jobs, whether it's unblocking with technical issues or accelerating innovation, having design architectural conversations, or operating your applications and troubleshooting. In addition, I will also talk about how you can create new communities to scale your AWS knowledge around your specific needs. So before we launched Repost, we spoke to several customers, and they often said, there are several online communities, and builders like you across virtually every industry take advantage of the breadth of services that AWS offers. And then many of you, in fact, all of you have wealth of knowledge around AWS, and you often visit public forums to access the knowledge and also to seek knowledge. So these public forums are not new. They exist since 1994, and they can be great places to discuss and debate about topics. But when it comes to technical questions about AWS services, these places are not authoritative. So customers told us they don't trust these public forums. Second, many of the answers provided on public forums are inaccurate and stale. There's no mechanism to maintain and update those answers. Third, many of them are not answered. Customers often told us that they don't find the responses they're looking for. So based on this customer feedback, we worked backwards from customers and then launched Repost at reInvent last year. Like John just mentioned, we're celebrating the first birthday for Repost. And thanks for the folks who joined Repost community so far. And Repost is a community knowledge sharing service designed to help you unblock with your technical issues, accelerate innovation, and operate more efficiently. And then you can visit Repost by clicking on repost.aws. So Repost offers 4 key benefits. First, it's a single authoritative source. With Repost, you can trust the answers provided on Repost in a public forum. And these answers are provided by experts. So experts include AWS employees, our customers, and partners. So we created this expert online community for you to collaborate. And then third, better community engagement. So we built in certain mechanisms to route questions to the right set of experts to answer as well as to validate. And fourth and most important is repost. If you are a premium support customer, the questions asked on repost, or if they're not answered by the community, then they get routed to our support engineers. So over the past 1 year, we have been talking to several customers, and here is a couple of anecdotes that some of our customers shared. I'll give you a moment to read about it. As you can see, there are really two types of customers that are coming into repos. One is seeking knowledge, and then other one is trying to learn best practices across the customer community. So repost lets you quickly find and answers that you're looking for. You can accomplish this without logging into repost. Repost is open. It's a public offering offered by AWS for the AWS public knowledge. So login is optional, and the content on repost is organized by tags and topics. Tags and topics are your favorite services and technologies. So you can, and then repost also has machine learning capabilities built in to auto-tag questions that are posted and group them for better discoverability. At the same time, it also offers content recommendations that are relevant for your needs. And then on repost, you can also follow specific topics and community groups and stay up to date. In order for you to do that, you need to log in to repost. So I will mention about how you can log into repost. There are a couple of login mechanisms that we just launched one mechanism today. So I'll talk about it briefly in a moment. But before that, you can trust the guidance on repost because these questions are either answered by AWS employees or customers and partners and reviewed by experts. So experts are folks who earn reputation on repost either through long contribution or a curated set of experts from the technical field communities that John mentioned. So our internal technical field community members, external customers are constantly looking at the questions and reviewing the answers provided, and then they verify the answer. So answers reviewed by them are marked as expert reviewed. And then I already mentioned about the routing where we look at the most probable and most expert who can answer a particular question based on the type of service and the type of question that is being asked. So you can become an expert community member and show off your skills around AWS. And we have a gamification element that is built into repost. So you can earn points as you contribute to your community expert status by answering questions, reviewing others' answers, and for adding AWS certifications to your profile. So repost offers various levels of expert tier points system that includes like Rising Star, Star, Champion, Sage, and Fellow. So once you achieve these levels, you will earn badges that you can showcase on repost and in your social media profiles. In addition, we are incrementally adding new capabilities to repost. For example, Rising Star community members can post community-generated articles on repost. So it's a new capability that we launched earlier this year. Similarly, in future, we plan to add new features as our community members reach new tiers. Like I mentioned earlier, repost is integrated with our support system. It's not like a traditional forum where nobody looks at answers. So we integrate this with our support system. If the question is from premium support customer, whether it's developer support or business support, enterprise support, or enterprise on-ramp, these questions we wait for community to respond to these questions, and then if it's not answered, then AWS support engineers will look into these and provide a response, ensuring that you are empowered on repost. So repost is the primary place where we encourage the customers to start with, and then if you don't find the answer you're looking for, as a premium support customer, you can open the support case. So good news is like we have had great engagement since the past 1 year, and we continue to work backwards from our customers, and we have been getting a lot of feedback from our customers, and we introduced several new features this year across three areas. First is making repos personal. So we want to, like a lot of customers told us since the launch that the email notifications were bothering them, like they wanted us to simplify the notifications. So we launched simplified notification system. It's self-service notification mechanism where customers can decide when they want to receive notifications, on what content activity, and at what frequency. So the second feature that we launched was profile pictures for individuals to showcase their identity on repost. And today, we're excited to launch the ability to log in with AWS Builder ID. AWS Builder ID is new personal profile for builders and does not require AWS account to sign in. So with AWS Builder ID, you can simply create a new profile and sign into repost. And you don't have to tie it with AWS account. But at the same time, we heard from several partners that they want to use single repost profile. However, they want to link multiple AWS accounts to that repost profile. The reason being, a partner working with multiple customers would love to switch their profile and ask questions in order to get the premium support benefit. So I'm also excited to announce today that we launched linking multiple AWS accounts to single repost profile. And then we also launched a leaderboard to recognize our top contributors on repost. So thanks to all the contributors that are contributing across various technology areas. The second area is when we launched repost last year, we launched in English language only. So this year, we spent a lot of time to expand the language support in 5 different languages. So in order for us to, we understand our customers are spread across the globe, and it's important for us to share the knowledge, and not only in English, but all the global languages. So we're taking incremental steps, and we are introducing language support, multi-language support in 5 languages. That includes traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and French. And then in the future, we'll be adding more languages. And lastly, like I mentioned earlier, in order to scale the knowledge and enable sharing best practices, we introduced community-generated articles. So using these community-generated articles, experts with 1,000+ points or community members with 1,000+ points can share best practices, troubleshooting articles, everything that they learned, and reuse from the existing articles that we have. So with that, I will walk you through a bit of how you can reuse repost. Like I mentioned earlier, you can go to repost.aws. You can browse and search for content on repost. So the content is organized around questions, articles, tags, topics, and then community groups. You can find answers. You can ask questions and then reuse existing best practices shared through community-generated articles, or join a community group. So repost is accessible in 5 languages. You can use the language filter on the top right menu to switch or change the language. Or if repost automatically detects your browser language and then opens it in your language as well. If you want to switch between the languages, you can switch. So you can browse question and answers, and then we provide multiple options like ability to sort by popularity, sort by votes, and there's also a filter to see unanswered questions. If you're keen and interested to answer unanswered questions, you can go in there and start answering. And then we also have the search capabilities to filter. So here is an example of an expert-reviewed answer. Like I mentioned earlier, the questions are routed to experts for a response if they're for an answer, as well as routed to them for reviewing the answer provided by the community member. Here is an example where an expert is highlighted as reviewed the question. So you can browse community-generated articles. as well. So here is an example of few articles that are available on Repost. So you can search within articles. So in order for users to unlock this feature, you need to earn 1,000 plus points, like I mentioned. So here is the new sign-in page that we just introduced today. So you can either sign in through the management console or use the new builder ID to sign in to Repost. So once you sign in, you can link multiple AWS accounts or multiple profiles to a single Repost profile. So here is an example of a user who signed in with builder ID, and then they linked multiple AWS accounts to one single Repost profile. So here is the notification settings that I mentioned earlier. So you can choose when you want to receive a notification and for what activity and at what time of the day, and set the frequency using the notification setting within Repost. And then the language support. So we introduced multi-language support. So you can choose the interface language as well as the content language. So the content language is a multi-selection where you may, if you're a multilingual speaker and would be interested in accessing content in multiple languages, you can choose to access in multiple languages. So once you sign in, you can ask questions. And the questions are auto-tagged using our machine learning model so that it's curated and presented in the right areas and also routed to the right experts for a response. So you can also stay engaged once you log in. You can follow your favorite services like AWS Lambda that I'm following here. And then you can receive email notifications on the activity, like questions posted around Lambda or articles posted around AWS Lambda. So once you start engaging and participating in the community, you earn reputation points. And as you gain more and more points, you not only gain badges, but also get access to the new capabilities, like I mentioned earlier. And then you get recognized as you get higher in the community. You get recognized. These are our top 10 contributors. Thanks to all the contributions for them. And then in terms of, like John mentioned, we externalized all the technical communities. Like if you see the community groups on Repost, you will see the list of technology communities, industry communities, and business segments as well. So you can follow a particular community, join the discussion, or if you're looking to create new expert communities, whether it's online or managed, Repost is the right platform to leverage. And in terms of managed communities, let's hear from John on what are some of the best practices around creating managed communities.
Thank you, Sesi. Appreciate that. Really happy and excited with all the progress we've seen with Repost in the last year, ever since it's launched. Like you said, it's constantly improving. They're constantly iterating, and that's going to continue. This is really a great way to create online community and then have a way to collaborate with all of you. The rest of this presentation, I'm going to talk just a little bit about best practice around the managed communities, which utilize the online community as part of it, like Sesi said. But also there's a couple additional aspects that you should think about in terms of how to resource it, what automation you need, and a couple considerations. So first of all, scope is critical when you think about what communities do you want to build in your company. So when you do this, you can also think about, within that scope, what do you want them to do? So if you want them to be around knowledge sharing, and crossing different groups, then something like an online community is really right for you. If you are looking for additional business use cases, like you want to build a content pipeline, you want to drive events, you want to support your customers with these experts, all these other use cases, then I think you're going to want to consider building a managed community. So the next thing is think of how does your company determine specialization? At AWS, we think of it along the lines of service and segment domains, like I spoke about earlier. But that might be different for you. So you may have a type of knowledge based on your product portfolio or customer segments that you want to think about industries, about how your customers are utilizing your products. So it's very important to have like a clear line of like, what do you want to build these communities around? The next is who should be included. Are these focused around technical personas, non-tech personas? Do you want to have an overall inclusive structure from a global perspective, or are you looking for regional communities? There's no right or wrong answer to this, but it's usually best to think about how can you do this in the most scalable and efficient means possible. That's why at AWS, we wanted to make sure that these were global, organizationally agnostic communities so that people focus on knowledge, not focused on the business segment they support. And then finally, taking into all these accounts, what data points do you use to determine when do you want to actually invest in building one of these things? And you want to be pretty clear about that because that level of expectations to your stakeholders and customers is important in order for you to determine how do you want to go build these and what they want to do. So just to kind of show a little bit more about how we think about this at AWS, and this is just to illustrate the point of a way that you could approach this. Right? So like I said earlier, we think around service and segment line communities, but how do we determine what service or segment line communities we want to build? So first of all, the way that we think about this within the service aligned communities is it's based upon our service taxonomy, right? So I think if you look in the console and you see how it's organized, it's similar to how we organize technical field communities, but even so, we do combine some use cases to ensure we have an overall solution perspective. We look at technology trends and technology strategy over time, and we adapt these communities in order to focus on what the company is trying to accomplish. Second is around the segment domains. So similarly to what I described in service, we look at the industry maturity model, we call that at AWS, for how mature given industries are and where do we want to kind of focus and support. So we have a number of industry-aligned TFCs that are focused around a knowledge and solution set around being able to work with use cases and solutions around, say, retail, healthcare, and a number of other segments. And then just look at those trends over time to understand where should we actually be stitching together communities that span industries, that span service lines. So things like resilience, things like sustainability or migrations are great examples of where we've invested there. And then what data points we look at is really interest from people. How many members would we have if we invest in creating one of these communities, as well as that customer interest and customer demand that we look at on a regular basis. So then, like I said too, when we think about how we chose what roles to include, we chose to include all tech field roles. So these are focused on all the technical personas, solution architects, customer solution managers, professional services, and technical account managers. But we are open to other roles, and especially our service team product managers and marketing are very much a part of this. So the next piece of advice is really to think about inclusion, diversity, and equity in these communities. These are large managed communities with thousands of people. And so it's important at scale to make sure that you have inclusive practices so that everybody feels like they belong in one of these communities. And the way you do that is you look at the different processes you have, the leadership that you have. Does that leadership for these communities showcase kind of different perspectives, different personas, different organizations, and different people? So is it equitable in how people get those leadership positions within these communities, right? Think about how people join. So what you don't want is a process where people join these communities based on who they know. What you do want is for people to join these type of communities based on the fact that they have that knowledge and they were able to gain that knowledge and that everybody has equal opportunity to do that. So this is important to get different perspectives and everything in these type of large managed communities. The second thing is around leadership alignment and goals. Being able to contribute into something like a TFC requires time allocation, right? So it takes time to learn. It takes time to continue to sharpen the axe, as you can see from that quote I have from Abraham Lincoln. And managers need to provide their time to their teams in order to be a part of these things. Because if they don't, and it's above and beyond their role expectations, then A, you can burn your people out, and B, they're not going to enjoy it. So it's very important to make sure that there are goals aligned to these communities so that it really is part of what people do in their role, and they can do it effectively. And that they have time to give back and provide those business outcomes of being able to create an AWS knowledge network or a knowledge network for your company. So within resourcing, this is really important for managed communities, right? So, and the reason is because thought leadership around what are these communities doing, what do we want them to do, how do we keep people engaged, is important to have that kind of direction. And we think of that through a role that we call the technical leader. That technical leader is the overall leader for one of these given communities, but then it does break down into different organizational or regional groups. So this gives a chance for people to have a voice for different areas, have leadership opportunities for people, and be able to ensure that these communities cross all these different organizations. And so I think of this, I call this a decentralized ownership structure, because it provides ownership to multiple people throughout the world in order to collaborate and be leaders in really the thought leadership aspect. And so those roles are generally done by specialists in Amazon, those tech leader and regional leader roles. But then we also found that it's not always just enough to do that. You also need to think about the operational aspect. What's the reporting strategy? What's the tooling strategy? What content do we want to build? What do we want people to learn? And if we're doing events, how do we drive those? And a lot of that is provided by community management, program management, which is also a skill set that's important for these communities, especially as they grow larger. So the next thing I really wanted to briefly touch upon was automation. So when you're doing this and you're hitting thousands of people, it's really critical to automate. Because if you don't, you may not have a good roster of who are these experts. You're going to have to, you'll have manual processes that'll create inaccuracies. And it's difficult to guide people through these kind of manual mechanisms. So when you think of automation, I would think of them in 5 areas. First is kind of like your data reporting recognition strategy. So if you think of how do you want to report on it, you need to show this in a way that people have easy access to the data so that they can showcase what they've done so they can get recognition for their work, right? And so we use QuickSight, AWS QuickSight, to do this. And we share it out with an open platform for anyone in these TFCs to go in and grab these data points in an easy way, both for individual contributors as well as their managers. The second is around kind of expert enablement, mentoring. For those of you that have like a learning management system or something of the form, I would strongly recommend that if you're thinking about building something like a managed community, that you would consider including that within that product, right? And so what we do is we have a similar system where it kind of builds out learning paths. So our expert communities put in the training materials, and a lot of it's training certification content, things you've already seen, as well as some community-guided learnings. We put it in there, they get a mentor in the tool, they get recognition for being a mentor, and then it gives us an accurate membership directory that we can use for other systems, like how we're connecting those experts with customers, how they're building content, and all the different things they do, which you want to think of mechanisms there, because especially if you're hitting thousands of people, being able to find the right expert within these communities is not easy without automation. And then finally, how do you share knowledge in an effective and efficient manner? And Ceci did a great job of talking about how we do that through Repost, which is really kind of a great way to showcase what people know, what they learned, and how they're sharing that. And most importantly, have fun. Right? This is the most important piece of advice is you need to make sure these communities are engaging, that they're enjoyable, that people as they join this, they're able to focus on the areas that they care about. They're able to innovate. They're given space to innovate, right? So they should be fun. And if they are fun, then you'll see that they will continue to grow and they'll continue to be vibrant. So thank you for everything. I'm going to hand over to Ceci, who's just going to talk about a couple things in terms of a preview of what's coming up with Repost, as well as a call to action for how you can join us in our online community experience, as well as best practices for building out managed communities. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, John. So what's next for us? In terms of, I'm excited to inform that we have a plan to further simplify the experience. We heard from customers that there are too many places to go to for knowledge. So we're taking one step at a time to simplify the experience. So we have a plan to merge Knowledge Center with Repost. And then we do have a plan to expand the language support. So like I mentioned earlier, we introduced 5 languages. We want to expand the scope to more global audience, and we'll be adding more language support in the future. And then we also want to make the translated content more available for our customers. So that's kind of what's next for us in terms of new capabilities. And finally, the call to action, join us on Repost and join the community and join the conversation and share best practices and leverage the knowledge that's available. And then in terms of best practices, like John mentioned, use the best practices to create expert communities, whether it's online or managed communities. To create a new expert community that's not in Repost, like for example, we took a initial feedback from customers and created communities around technologies, industry segments, and business domains. If you want to create a new community and create the conversation, let us know by providing feedback on repost.aws/feedback. So we will work with you to create those communities. With that, I would like to thank you, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.